Hey everybody, this is Ugo, aka Android number 23, and I'm on the Atypical podcast today talking about life with sickle cell disease, family dynamic in a Nigerian household, and going to boarding school in Nigeria. Please watch and enjoy, like and subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what you thought about it. Thank you.
Welcome to another episode of Atypical Podcast with Deji, and I'm excited about today's episode. If you haven't visited our website, it's atypicalpodcast.show, and then you can check us out on social media, atypicalpodcast.show. Now, it's interesting because it's not Atypical Podcast, it's Atypical Podcast. And I say that every time, and it's funny to me every time. It's not even that funny. But today I have a very special guest on the show with me today, and it's Ugonna. And I'll have him introduce himself, but he's one of the greatest rappers alive, and I've known him for 11 years now. Great guy. But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Hello everybody, I'm Ugonna and your DK. You can call me Ugo, professionally known as Android number 23. I'm a rap recording artist, producer, engineer, IT professional, brother, son, general enjoyer of life.
All around great guy. Great guy. That's awesome. I thought you were going to add in there cat dad.
Cat dad, definitely a cat dad. Shout out to my cat Kaido. He's the best.
Let's talk about Kaido for a second though.
Yeah.
How did you decide to get a cat? Did you grow up with cats or?
No. I never grew up with any sort of mammal pets. I only had a fish a few times as a kid.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is a partner that I had a few years ago.
Yeah.
She had a cat, and I was dealing with a lot of health problems at the time. So when I started going for blood transfusions, she decided to surprise me with a kitten to raise my mood, because that whole process was a lot of there was a lot of stress, turmoil in my body and mind. So one day I come home and there's a kitten, and I told her specifically not to get me a kitten or not to bring any more cats, because there was already a cat in the house. And I was like, if you add another cat to the equation, then there's more cats than people. It throws the ratio off. She had wanted to adopt a kitten at the time, or adopt a few kittens. But she came back with a kitten, little black kitten, and I was like,
Did you hate it at first?
I didn't hate it, but I was kind of just like, another cat, and this cat doesn't have etiquette yet. He's young and just wants to play and doesn't know how to put his claws away. So I was kind of like,
Oh, it was scratchy, actually.
Yeah, he was really, really cute though. He was so little and so cute, but he ended up choosing me as a person. I was instantly his favorite person, and anytime I'd come over, he'd just be jump in my lap, and he'd act up when I wasn't there. But then when I came, he'd be completely
a different cat.
Yeah, he'd be a good cat. He was good, and he was always on me. So when me and her ended up separating, she was like, I can't keep this cat. He reminds me of you, and I'd really just appreciate if you took him. And we already had a relationship at this point, but I was ready to go our separate ways. It was what it was. He was just a cat to me. But ever since then, he's been my son. So.
Wow. Okay, so you're really one of those. You're really one of those people.
I always tell my parents, even when I have a real child, that's still my first son.
I was gonna ask. I actually was gonna ask you that. So we're different on that front, because I grew up with animals in my house. I grew up with dogs, but I could never bring myself to call myself a dog dad if I had a dog. Yeah. Just because the Nigerian, because I grew up in Nigeria, and the dog, pet, owning a pet in Nigeria is not the same.
Yeah, it's completely different culturally. Yeah, I feel even when I was in Nigeria, everything is treated different. Here, animals are members of the family.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never grew up with any sort of real pet, not a mammal at least, just a fish in a tank. So it was definitely a brand new experience for me. But I see why people love their pets so much. It's just different, you know. It's
like, by the way, guys, like if you check out Ugonna's social, like Kaido is like all over that place, like some days.
He's my best friend.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So what happens if, like, let's say you find another lady that you want to get married to, you really like, and she hates cats?
It's
not
funny.
Gonna work?
Well, yeah, my sisters asked me the same question, and I basically said, well, if she hates cats, then that's not my person.
Whoa, that's deep. That's a deal breaker.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge I love animals, PETA activist, any of that. But he means so much to me. He was like, he's family. He's family. He was like an emotional support type of animal for me. Yeah. Even when I came home from my transplant last year, I believe, and we'll talk about that as well, like the transplant. Definitely, we'll get into that. But just to say, okay, when I came home and I was trying to figure out my living situation, and I was back at the place I was staying at, and I didn't have any of my furniture. I was sleeping on the floor for a few months while I was trying to figure that out. And he was right there with me. It's just laid up on the floor with me every night. And I always would tell him, when I get a bed in here, this is our bed. It's not just my bed, this is our bed. And he's really family. He's truly family.
So you really be telling him, when we blow, when I blow and, money comes,
of course.
You're going to be the king cat.
I'm going to do everything for him, definitely. And I'm sure when I have a kid, then I'll know, this is a completely different. Of course, it's a human being, he's an animal, but I have all the love in the world for him. Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But my thing was Kaido reminded the person that you do eventually get with. So it's because you kind of got out from your ex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, wouldn't that bother?
That's true though. That's true though. Yeah. So okay, so for the purpose of audio, so what I'm saying is that if the story now with Kaido is linked to an ex that you had. Yeah. So now if you find someone that you really like, and the person actually likes cats, will that not be an issue that Kaido's from a past relationship?
I would hope not, because we all have past relationships.
What if they don't? Tough.
I would have to explain that people don't just disappear out of your life because you all broke up, and especially I guess it's different if it was ended on really bad terms, but we didn't end on bad terms either, so it's kind of just this is, regardless of what that was, this is still my cat. He's still my responsibility no matter what.
I see that. Okay, that's a good perspective, the responsibility perspective. That's a way to put it. I'm not gonna put this cat in the streets because
this is really assault.
Because of you, right?
Exactly.
No, that makes sense. Now you talked earlier about living in Nigeria for a bit. So you're American born, American raised, but you had a little stint.
Yes. Yes.
A little stint in the in the trenches.
I guess you could call it that.
So tell us about that.
Born in Baltimore, both of my parents obviously from Nigeria, Igbo. So around middle school age, my parents and a family friend decided that it would be a really good idea to send their kids to Nigeria to gain invaluable life experience. Which
this is invaluable life experience.
I have to say it was invaluable life experience, but
they did this to all of your siblings, right?
All of my siblings, no child left behind. so and it was kind of a rite of passage, which in retrospect, it means a lot to me. Mm-hmm. Because there was a lot of questions around sending me specifically. Yeah. Due to the health issues I've been dealing with my whole life. But
which was
sickle cell disease. I was born with sickle cell disease. So my mom made it an issue to make sure that I got the same experience as all of my siblings, and that I didn't feel left out, and I didn't feel like held back from anything.
Yeah.
So we all went around middle school age, I believe. Our last year of school for most of us was 6th grade. 7th grade is it corresponds with like JS1, I believe. So we'd all go to school for JS1. My eldest brother was there for 2 years before I went, so he was the first to go. And then when I was of JS1 age,
and that's other being Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, yes. Yeah. Then when I was of JS1 age, I went, and he had an interesting experience because I believe he went to 3 different schools in that time. So
Shucks.
He went to
2 years.
Yeah, he went to a boarding school in Port Harcourt for 1 year, then moved to a different boarding school in Anambra State for his 2nd year, and then his 3rd year was my 1st year, and I also went to boarding school with him in Anambra State, and then the 4th year we went to a different boarding school in Port Harcourt. So for me, it was a lot because in that 4-year span of time, I went from Loch Raven Academy Middle School in Baltimore to Grumvig International Secondary School in Anambra State to Amidst College in River State to Falston High School in Harford County, Maryland. I only did 2 years in Nigeria, so I went to 4 different schools in 4 years.
That's wild though. Like, what does that do? Like in terms of like your friendships, like you have.
Luckily, I do have like some sort of like long-standing friendships from connections built in the Nigerian community here. But a lot of friends I went to school with in the Baltimore area, I kind of like, I guess, permanently never got to reconnect with them. I was permanently disconnected. And then going to school in Harford County was a completely different experience.
So, okay, let's also like explain for the purpose of like the audience, right? So the Baltimore school that you were in, was it like, what was like the diversity like, or what was the demographics like?
Mostly black. It was a magnet school. It was actually a magnet school because if I didn't get into that magnet school, I would have went to, I believe, Golden Ring Middle, which was, I mean, I've heard the stories, just crazy.
This is crazy school.
Yeah, I mean.
But how was Harford County different?
All white.
Yeah.
All white. So, yeah, I mean.
That's a really, okay, I need to say this though, that's a really rich experience.
It is.
I think so. Like, that's like, you had like, you know, was that a Baltimore City school or county school?
Baltimore County School. Okay. Loch Raven was in Baltimore County School. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it wasn't, listen, and I know the city schools are even more different. What I will say is that the experience probably at Golden Ring and at Overly probably would more mirror a city school experience.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That's true, because they're also on the city-county line-ish in a way. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. So like you had like, you know, the Baltimore County experience, the Nigeria, you know, like Trenches experience, then back to like, you know, the Harford County type of experience.
Yeah.
First of all, you mentioned something earlier that some of your siblings, because all of you did this tour, right? Some of your siblings took it better than others. Yeah. Who would you say took it best, took it worse, and you know, what was the experience like?
So I'll say we were all there for different amounts of times. Me and my youngest sister were there for 2 years. The eldest boy, Emmanuel, and the eldest girl, Precious, were there for 4 years, and then the youngest, Buka, was there for 5 years, and he's also was not there with any of his siblings because we were kind of aged out, and then since his sister was only there for 2 years, she came right back home.
Yeah.
I would say of the people who took it best, I think I took it the best because even though a lot happened in Nigeria, I think I took almost every strength from it I possibly could.
Wow.
And maybe like none of the weaknesses and very little trauma. I'm a very like, I don't know what the word to use is, but like things don't faze me. Like getting beatings and whoopings, like that stuff doesn't faze me. It doesn't make me feel as though I was like so terribly abused and done wrong because everybody was getting whooped in school. It wasn't just me, so it's like, you know, we all got it.
Yeah.
My brothers, I'd say they probably took it the worst, and they were there for the longest. Plus, Emmanuel was the oldest, so
he was there by himself. It was the first.
He was there by himself.
Feelings of like, there's a lot of tension around like, why would you do this? Like for you, at least you've seen someone else, you know, your older brother being sent, but he's the first. It's
and I think with him as well, he was maybe a bit more expressive about his gripes with going there in the first place, and not only going there, but the way in which my parents handled some of the things there. Like, he wasn't fond of being at 3 different schools in 4 years, which is completely understandable. And African parents, their opinion is law. Like, their opinion is law. So when you feel like you're not being heard and you're not being understood, that can definitely cause like rifts between the two parties.
That's true.
And then the youngest, I mean, I think the combination of him being the baby, which the younger siblings were raised differently than us, the older ones, coupled with the fact that he was there for 5 years without any siblings, it was kind of just a recipe for disaster. So yeah, I mean, I just try to be there for my brothers though, and still preach the importance of family. Yeah.
That's heavy because you can tell from that there's a lot of like tension and rift from that experience.
Even though we took a lot of things from that experience, in a lot of ways it like kind of pulled our family apart in ways that wasn't necessary. For I think like a 12-year period, there was never a time where all of us were together.
Yeah, and that's important.
Except for like maybe during the summertime when we would come back. So it's like we've all sort of redeveloped our bonds through obviously siblinghood, collective trauma, disgruntled feelings towards our parents.
I get what you mean.
Like that's things that we have in common, and we bond through that. But also we're still siblings, so we still have like
that's real though. That's real.
Deep bond. But I don't know if it worked.
Would you do it? Would you do it if like as a parent? Would you send your kids back?
I think the only difference, which I think is a lot to ask for from my parents, but if I were to send my kids back, I would go and live there and be there, like, and not make it seem like they're being just sent halfway across the world with no one there, or spend more time there, like maybe stay there for a few months and come back. And that's a lot to ask for because my parents already spent tons of money and energy sending us there, and you know, from their perspective, they're here working their butts off to make sure that we have a unique experience from anyone else. And we come back and it's like, it was terrible. It was trauma. You should have never done that. You made the wrong decision in life. So it's really tough for both sides. It's like parents who truly wanted the best for their kids and worked their butts off to do that, and kids who felt they were put through an experience unnecessarily that completely changed the family dynamic.
And then they now have to like constantly live with, you know, the questioning of, and I also wonder if you know, after the first one, they thought to themselves, maybe we shouldn't do this again. But then, you know, he's already had the experience. It's going to now be like, it will make us the absolute worst that would put him through this and nobody else did it.
I don't think they thought that. And it's funny, like, a few of my cousins got sent as well. And it was kind of like, some of them, like, went and then came back and outright refused to go back. Like, really, like, you know, ripped up the plane ticket, just said, I'm not going, and that's that. And I respect that, honestly. But,
wait, but like, how does that even work though? Like, if you like, don't your parents have rights to like force you to the airport and board a plane? How does it work in America? I honestly don't know.
Maybe, but I can say from my perspective, especially post 9/11, you can't follow me through TSA. All I have to do is just not get on the plane. And then you wasted your money. And it's not a crime that I didn't get on the plane, you know?
Like the police will not
walk
way to the plane. No, that's real. That's real.
So, I mean, what are you going to do? Kick up a fuss and then what? Like you're fighting in the airport? No, it's... Sometimes I question, like, if we didn't want to do it that bad, why did we do it?
You sound like you were chill about it.
Not really. When I was there, I was crying. The whole first flight, I was just crying the whole time on the plane. Like, it was scary. And then, like, you know, when I got on the second flight from Frankfurt to, was it Lagos? I think it was Lagos or Tal Mohammed. And once it started making that final descent and I saw the corrugated iron roofs, everything was orange. I was like, this is real. Like, this is really happening. Like, I was in just shock and disbelief. When I was in Frankfurt, I was like, you still in the Western world. I was like, you know, maybe this isn't real. Maybe this isn't happening. Maybe I can find my way out of this. But that was the moment of like, this is real. And Nigeria smells different. It feels different.
Not the smells different.
You know, it's really like you can't.
Have you met whoever picked you up? Did you meet them before that? Was it like an uncle?
It was my uncle. I don't want to say no, and then I have, but when I did, I must have been too young to remember.
Do you remember?
Because I went to Nigeria when I was 5, very young, and I met all my grandparents except for my mom's mom, who passed when she was young. But I met all my grandparents before they passed. Plenty of uncles and aunties, but you know, I was too young to remember all by face. I know them now, but yeah, I didn't know him. You know, he was definitely a stranger to me, but my brother had been there for 2 years prior and he knew him. So,
and your brother was with you?
Yes.
That's encouraging. Now, imagine that experience that you had crying all the way. Imagine your brother having that by himself.
And that's why I feel for him. And, you know, I try to empathize with all my siblings as much as possible.
That's tough, man.
Everyone's experience was different. Like,
what was the roughest thing that happened to you, like, you know, in Nigeria? Like, what was like the one experience that you're like, I could have lived without that?
Excuse me. There was a time close to the holidays where the senior students, it was like SS2 and SS3 students, were lighting knockout and just having fun, going crazy. And there was this one teacher who notoriously never punished the senior students. Like, I think he was like a physics teacher or something like that. So you're not supposed to be lighting knockout at school, all of that. And he came out and told everyone lie down except for the senior students. He said, everyone SS2 and down, lie down. And it was the SS3 students, they were the ones lighting the knockout.
Yeah.
They didn't get in trouble for it, but everyone had to lie down, and he went one by one with a mop stick, wooden mop stick, flogging every single person.
That's wild.
And that was a interesting experience, because although I would say, you know, I didn't need that to happen, I learned a lot from that experience. That was like a moment of pure tyranny where I was like, okay, life is unfair. And
so what we're learning from this is, in life, there are people that are mean just to be mean.
I think the only redeeming factor was that everyone got punished. So it wasn't just me or a few people singled out. I think all of us collectively learned how unfair life can be that day, because the perpetrators got away with it and everyone got punished on their behalf.
Yikes.
Yeah. So
that's a very interesting one. Brings a lot of things to mind, especially in the world that we live in right now. That's very interesting. So what would you say was your most beautiful experience being over there?
2006 World Cup final. We were all huddled around a small TV.
And you're a big soccer buff. So
that was when I became a big soccer fan. Really? I wasn't a soccer fan before that. That was just a beautiful moment of community, the type of stuff that you see on TV and in commercials, like people in a third world country all huddled on a small TV.
But I know what you're saying.
When they're talking about the beauty of the when they're talking about the beauty of the game and how it's everyone's game, and living that moment in real life, and that was a good game too. It was France versus Italy, went to a penalty shootout, legends on both sides. So that was just a
legendary.
It was one of those moments where the energy is just undeniable.
Yeah.
You really feel it. So that was
So you guys watched it together in school?
Yep.
That's pretty cool of your school to make you.
And we weren't allowed to like always watch TV and stuff like that. So that was one of those moments, like, here's a special moment so we can watch it. Aside from that, I believe one of my uncles had a chieftaincy during the holiday while we were there. So that was really beautiful because I saw so many of my cousins and family members from here, everyone back home in the village. So that was like, wow, like the love is so real. Like, you know, I understand why people are happy in this country, even though they don't have anything, because here in America, you can have everything and people will be sick and depressed and upset and suicidal. But over there, all people need is a glimmer of hope. All they need is a little something. And it's just...
And it's been interesting how that people that have so much less can, in some ways, actually enjoy life better than those that have a lot more. And that
was my biggest takeaway from living in Nigeria. And for that alone, it was an invaluable experience for me. Wow. Just the appreciation of life. That's why I said in the beginning, like an enjoyer of life. Like, make no mistake, I'm not on yachts and on cruises and on vacations. My life is filled with a lot of head-scratching moments and turmoil, but it's just hard for me to not see the beauty in life because it's a gift. It really is a gift from God. Like, that's
amazing, man.
You know,
that's really and interestingly, one of the things that, you know, Pastor Chris always says, right? I tell people this, like, I'm the kind of person that, like, if you go out to dinner with me or, you know, I'm eating anything, like, if I like it, you will know. Like, every moment is severed, and it's from something that Pastor actually taught. You know, where he talked about how a lot of people are on a journey through life, and they're like, imagine yourself being on a bus and there's so much beauty that's passing you by, and your mind, like, even in your mind, you're at your destination rather than where you're at. And Pastor always says something, says, I am where I am at every given point in time. And I think that's such a key thing, because there's no way you're running to, like, yes, you can have goals and ambitions, but like, there's more. And for me, that was a big deal, because, like, when I was in school, I always looked forward to holidays. So I was raised to, like, always look forward to something. But now being mindful that, hey, like, life is to be lived and enjoyed in the moment, because, like, those moments you're waiting for, they are much less in comparison to the rest of the time that you have, you know. So I definitely, like, connect with you on that. That's a very good one.
Awesome.
So to the experience, now there are a lot of things on my mind that I'm trying to now, like, sort of arrange, you know, how to, you know, bring these factors in. You mentioned that, you know, you had, you know, suffered with sickle cell disease. What was that like in Nigeria, and knowing how intense, you know, crisis or things like that can be? What was that like living in Nigeria?
Eye-opening, because my childhood was really, really smooth. And going to Nigeria is the first time I understood the severity of sickle cell disease, not because of what I went through, but because of the way they treated me when they found out I have it. And they said, first of all, they didn't want to let me into the school. They said, we don't want to have him here. If anything happens, we don't want it to happen on our watch. And there was a lot of stress and tears and prayer from my mother to just allow me to attend. Like, everything couldn't fall apart here at this final moment. I already packed everything, flew home, and now it's like,
wow. So it was after you got to Nigeria, so they discovered and they didn't want to.
They didn't want to take me, and my mother prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and then they, for whatever reason, they said okay. And I had almost no complications in Nigeria. In fact, when I came home, I looked better. I looked way healthier than I ever had looked before.
Very interesting.
Oh, now I kind of understand why, and like, you know,
why?
I mean, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but a lot of the stuff here in America that they feed us is poison.
Yeah.
So
that's from one from one person that you said not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. From you to someone who doesn't mind sounding like a conspiracy theorist. I'm completely with it. Like, say it again. Like, I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff they put in the food, the preservatives, the processed food, even the animals, the meat, what that stuff goes through
Literal
before
poison.
it gets to the store.
Yep.
From top to bottom, some of the stuff that we cook with, the pans, like there's a lot of stuff that's very bad for us here.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously I didn't do the scientific research to say this is what I ate and this is why I was better.
Yeah, no.
But when I came home that first summer, not just my mom, but other people like aunts and uncles in the community are like, wow, he looks better. So it was America that was killing him, not sickle cell. You know, and I mean, a lot of people can attest to it that they'll go overseas and stay there for 2-3 weeks and eat as much as they want and lose weight, or something like that. So, me personally, I actually was in a lot of ways a lot healthier over there. I did get sick once or twice with malaria, but that was never anything too serious. Like, I remember being hospitalized once in a hospital in Nigeria, which is crazy and scary. But
why? The mean nurses.
It was just different. Like, you know, when you're used to being in a hospital in America and then you go to the hospital in Nigeria, and like the bed is just like a metal frame, and like it's just different. Like, you know, you see technological machines here and stuff
and
like that.
And they give it some kind of comfort.
Yeah, but there it's just the bed. Like the IV pole is just a metal pole with the bag of like little details. But like when you see how different it is, it's like very much like, okay, I'm really in a third world country. Like this is.
Gets me every time he says it though.
You know, so the care was fine though. Yeah. It was just you know, like when you're here you have a TV, remote, comfort, and there it's really like, okay, you're here just to make sure that you don't die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I think also just to like add some, you know, context for anyone that's like thinking about it, you know, it's not to say that people don't have sickle cell disease in Nigeria as well, but you know, I think what you're saying is really like the American experience and all of the things in the ecosystem are designed to make any situation almost even, you know, several times worse. And there are many documentaries on this as well, in terms of like the, you know, pharmaceutical industry in America, the food industry, especially the food industry in America and all that stuff. So, but that said, like, so really you started to experience like sickle cell crisis when you were back in America?
Yeah, and I think part of that is due to like getting older. Around 18, 19 years old, when I was in college, that was when I had my first real severe crisis. The most severe one, like in 2018, things took a really bad turn. That's when I had to get on medication for it, and I had to start eventually doing transfusions, and that's when transplant became an option because it was really serious. But that was 2018. I was like 24 going on 25. And I was hospitalized at Johns Hopkins for 3 weeks. I mean, it was just bad. It was really bad. I didn't know what was going on in my body. It's the worst my body has ever felt. Opioids were doing nothing for me, which is like scary because a lot of times they can do something, maybe not oral, but once it's like IV medication, it typically does stuff, and it was doing nothing for me. Also, being in the hospital for 3 weeks is like a pretty serious thing because they want to get you in and out as soon as possible. So being there for 3 weeks was crazy. And I remember vividly, I announced my release date for my project.
Yeah, because I remember the picture of that. Like you actually, yeah, go ahead.
I announced my release date for my project, I think, the week I ended up hospitalized. Like earlier that week, I announced it. I had a studio session with someone on that Saturday. And I remember at this time, I was also like kind of overworking myself because I was working full time and also kind of doing part-time studio gigs. But I will say that is the most money I ever made off of music. Like I was really, really making good money, like extra 1,000 plus a month just off of studio gigs. And I remember saying, dang, I don't want to cancel this studio session, and just telling them I have to cancel. And I tried to like take medication, lay in bed. It didn't get better. And I ended up hospitalized. After a few days, I wasn't thinking about the release date because it was like, yeah, I think I'm going to die. Like I've never felt like this before. Wow. And I'm like laying here getting weaker and weaker under the supervision of medical professionals. Like, is this really it for me? Like this is how it's gonna end? Like I'm just gonna wither away in this bed? Is there nothing they can do? And my knowledge of sickle cell is like, you know, a cellular disease, so it's not like they can put you on a table and do surgery or operate. Like, no, it's like all the blood cells in your body working against you. So knowing that, I was very, very, very concerned. But my mother advocated for me, and she made sure that I got the treatment that I needed, while doctors were kind of going by the numbers and saying, you know, well, we have to wait for things to get to this level before we take that next step of intervention.
Like in what ways? Like what kinds of interventions? Like so she would have them do things earlier than they would have.
So and this is the thing that really became important to me, is like knowing what's going on in your body. They wanted my hemoglobin numbers to drop to a certain point before they would give me a blood transfusion. And I mean, she advocated for me getting that transfusion as soon as possible because it's been X amount of time I haven't gotten better. She would leave work and make phone calls. I mean, just going, I'm not going to say going crazy, but just fighting for her son, fighting for me. And I couldn't fight for myself. First of all, I didn't have the knowledge at that time, even though I was 25. That's why it's important to have the knowledge. But I also was just in and out of consciousness, just on these opioids, just not even being in relief of pain, but the opiates would just put me to sleep, so I'm not actively feeling this pain. But she advocated for me to get the transfusion. I'd never had a blood transfusion before. And after this first transfusion, it was crazy how much better I felt and how much it just changed things just like that. Wow. So I was like, okay, wow. After the fact, when I was doing, taking hydroxyurea for it, which really wasn't doing that much for me. I'm sure it was doing things number-wise in my body, but feeling-wise, I felt horrible. I felt sicker than normal.
What is that? What is that?
Hydroxyurea. It's a medication that was approved, I believe, in the 90s to treat sickle cell. What it does is it's supposed to raise the amount of fetal hemoglobin in your blood. Fetal hemoglobin, I guess, is like healthier hemoglobin from when you were a baby, when you're, you know, I guess when your stem cells are producing things. You know, that's why they use stem cells to try to cure different diseases, because they're like the healthiest cells that can evolve into, like, I guess, you know, turn things into healthy, like revert things back to its healthiest state. I don't have, like, you know, the greatest medical knowledge, but people who know will understand what I'm getting at. But it has a lot of side effects. It's used for cancer treatment as well. It's used for a lot of different things, and I was feeling the effects of the side effects more than I was feeling the effects of my increased fetal hemoglobin. And in preparation for my transplant, they had to put me on monthly blood transfusions because the hydroxyurea.
So when did transplant become an option? Because I know there's also like a whole, like, you have to be on UNOSIS. I mean, UNOSIS for organ transplants, isn't it? Is there like a transplant list for when it comes to bone marrow transplants, or how does that work?
If you have to go through a registry, probably. But for me, transplant became an option. First, we went through NIH. They wanted me to be, I guess, a little bit sicker than I was, because you have to justify the risks with, against your current lifestyle. And I guess in 2018, I hadn't had enough serious episodes, although from 2018 all through 2020, every few months I was back in the hospital. So 2018 is when we started looking into it. We were going to do it through Hopkins instead around 2020. Obviously, COVID started, so things were really crazy. But in 2020, spring of 2020, I got a call from NIH saying that they've reviewed my records and that I now am eligible for the protocol. Which, by the way, this is like, I guess, considered still experimental. But a big difference between Hopkins and NIH is NIH fully funded, fully paid for. I just come and receive, and even for some parts of the study I got paid. Hopkins, you're paying. Insurance will probably cover however much they cover, and then you're paying. So when it was made clear to me that I would be able to do this through NIH, I had to make sure, like, kind of go down a checklist, make sure my body could handle it. And also, because of the risk of infertility, they wanted to make sure I banked sperm, so I had to go through some stuff like that, where it was discovered that the hydroxyurea was affecting my fertility, so I had to get off of it.
Wow.
To bring my counts up in bank. And that was like...
But that's interesting though, like even with the hydroxy stuff that you mentioned, like, did you know that was a side effect? Like the
list of side effects is long enough that you don't...
Nobody
you only think about the ones that are bothering you right now. The ones that are making you feel sick right now. You're not thinking about the future side effects or the side effects of like, oh, you might not be able to have kids. Like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm like, oh, I feel nauseous. Like, I feel immunocompromised, sicker, weaker, tired all the time. So it was probably listed. That was probably listed there. And I found that a lot in dealing with modern medicine and pharmaceuticals, that although it is like wondrous what they can do, when it comes to the medication, you don't find out too much until you go through it, and then they're like, oh yeah, that is a side effect. They might not tell you initially, but or they read down the list like it's required, like on the medication commercials. When they run through it really fast. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But I got off of that, and I was doing transfusions every month for almost a year. And in that period of time, that felt great. Like, I was like, wow, these transfusions are amazing. It was after like week 3 where I'd feel weak, but week 1 and 2, I felt like I could do anything. I felt like I could play sports, lift weights, all that extra stuff, like back to my regular self. Like, in high school, I played football, so I was able to play sports. That was like my...
That's American football.
Yeah, that was like physically fit then. Like, I was able to kind of keep up. Your body changes as you get older, and that's kind of where things changed for me. So in that, I discovered, okay, these blood transfusions, which have side effects of their own, like, your body can build up iron from that because you're receiving other people's blood, and that's not like being removed, and you end up having to get on other medications for that. But I discovered more about myself. I learned more about what these numbers mean and stuff like that. And
so with the bone marrow transplant, that you weren't on the registry?
No. Sibling donor match. Oh, that's like the best and safest way to go. So all my siblings got tested, and the youngest brother was a 100% donor match.
Wow.
So that's and that's usually how they'll do it first. Before you go on a registry, they'll ask if you have any family members, cousins, stuff like that. So I had a sibling donor. He had to go through a process of his own to donate. They don't actually take bone marrow out of your bones. They just take like a bunch of your blood, and it goes through a machine that like separates the red cells and platelets, and then the stem cells, and the stem cells are what gets infused into you. Everything was done through an IV. except for me, my preparation.
So this is like like a different type of like medicine then, or is this? Like
no, I think it's always been this way. Okay. I think when people think bone marrow transplant,
they think like they're injecting, like
exactly. Because when you think most organ transplants, for example, they're taking an organ out and they're putting one in. But with the bone marrow transplant, the only like invasive part I had to do bone marrow wise was a biopsy where they actually take marrow out of your bone to analyze it. See where it's at and stuff like that, which that might have been the most painful part. Like they numbed it around, but then like when they take the marrow out of your bone, you feel the change in pressure inside of your bone. It's crazy. And it's like, wow, it's a lot. But I went through a whole process of like making sure my body could handle this, like psych evaluations, etc. And then it's like a round of radiation, several days of chemotherapy. And what that does is like suppresses the bone marrow in your own body, kind of kills it off. And then I received a stem cell infusion. And then you just kind of let nature take its course. You do have to take medication to make sure it doesn't reject, as well as antibiotics, because you've now become immunocompromised through radiation and chemotherapy.
How have you felt since though?
Since the transplant?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Like there's been almost no like noticeable changes, except my allergies got way worse. I don't know what that's all about. But my body has been great, strong, fast. Well, not fast, but like I'm speaking like an athlete now, but stronger. I can run more in the gym. I can lift weights. I don't have pain crises from it. I don't feel as exhausted, which I think about that. Like now I can actually like really push my body to its limits. And I put on a bunch of weight because my body with sickle cell was burning 4 times the amount of energy just to produce red blood cells.
Wow.
So when your body is now producing healthy red blood cells and it doesn't have to keep recycling blood cells because the sickled cells are like being trashed, everything slows down. And I'm trying to get a hold of that now because I eat regular, but I just gain more weight, and that's why I'm in the gym.
Because you used to be like really skinny.
Yes, super skinny.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of normal size, getting a little bit chubby. But yeah. It's good though.
It's very cool, man. Do you remember that there was a time actually, I think in like I don't know if it was 2021 or 20, I don't know if it was 2021 or 2022, where, I invited you out to lunch in the White Marsh area. Yeah. And we had talked for a little bit. Do you feel like at any point in your, like this journey, like, do you feel like there was how did it impact the faith in God? Like, did you at any point, I mean, now you're in church, like how did it impact your faith in God at that time?
Ironically, my faith in God has never really swayed. Like, my relationship with God is kind of a little bit of a different story, but I've always had faith in God. Like there was a moment I had a while back where someone I really care about was going through something serious and I thought they were going to hurt themselves. And I remember just praying and saying, like, I didn't know anything else to do. I was just like, God, if you let them be okay, I promise I'll come back. Like, at that time, I wasn't believing in God really, or I was like, just kind of not really, like, my faith had gone away. Yeah. So I remember I was like, this is back when I was in college, and I was like, God, if you let this person be okay, it doesn't matter what I go through. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm back. I promise I'm back. And they were okay. And from that point forward, I was like always having faith in God.
That's amazing.
And never thinking God was like, nothing was too big for God. Like, I think for me, sometimes I may not always call on God.
Yeah.
I have this tendency to feel like my problems are like too small and that there's bigger issues at hand that I want God to tend to.
He's busy with, he's busy with bigger problems.
Yeah, and that helps my faith sometimes too. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does, because I'll feel like, wow, how is the world in tatters like this? But at the same time, it helps because
like
I know
he's so busy.
Yeah,
why is the world where it is?
You know,
that's an interesting thought.
But at the same time, I can never look at anything that happens in my life and feel like God wasn't there for me and God wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I have prayer warriors that pray for me. So
even if you did mention that, I think when we and that's what I was trying to reference as well. You know, that time when we had lunch, you talked about how like you watched your mom, you know, really like just like launch out her faith on your behalf. Growing up. That's amazing.
That's. You know, even if I never sit down and take that time to pray for myself, I always pray for everyone else before I pray for myself. But my prayer warriors have me covered. You know, like my mom, my aunts and uncles, family members. So
well, you gotta pray for yourself at some point.
Of course. I pray for myself, but I pray for everybody else first.
Oh yeah, that's actually true. And you know. Very, very interestingly, that's what the scriptures actually instruct us to do, right? You pray for others, and as you do that, because that's you fulfilling your ministry as a priest unto God. As you do that, God takes care of the things that concern you as well. You know, and that's what we even teach. Like to what you were saying earlier about, you know, the world being in tatters is because a lot of people pray more for themselves. You know, and God requires human permission to act in the earth. So it's literally we're the ones that invite him. And if we don't invite him, he won't act. But we're only inviting him into things that have to do with like ourselves, you know. Another
thing is since leading up to that transplant and since transplant, I actually just spend a lot of time like gratitude. I always try to start my prayers just thanking God for everything I already have and just looking at my life from a place of gratitude, which is why I'm an enjoyer of life, because I see the beauty in life and I see the beauty in being here and the beauty in having the opportunity to do whatever I want to do because I'm still here, and that's honestly more than enough for me.
That's awesome, man. So let's talk about your music.
Okay.
Anything new coming out soon?
Yeah, I mean, for the last 2.5, 3 years, I've been working on my debut album called Vert Renee. That's French. It translates to Green Rebirth. The name came from a few different influences in my life and like different inspirations. But at the time when I started the album, I felt like I was like discovering who I am and discovering what really matters in life, and like going from being in a dark place to being in a place of just deep gratitude and appreciation, no matter what's going on in life. And when I started making this album, I was dealing with a lot of health problems, so I was making it like this would be my last album. Like I was like, I'm gonna say everything I need to say on this, and I'm gonna just leave it all out there. Hopefully it'll be done by the end of this month. I've been working on it for a very long time, and I am tired. I just want it to be done. But it's the most beautiful thing I've ever worked on. I've grown so much as a person from the experience. I've learned so much. It was primarily produced by my friend JP, who goes by Garcon, and I met him at a show. Meeting him and working on this album and our friendship also feels like something God put in place in my life, because I've had a lot of experiences with people in music where like I lost friends and the feeling went away from me, because it was like I love making music, but I love the brotherhood that was surrounding it even more and having like those people around me. So I felt like God put him in my life at the perfect time to just like make this music and sit down with each other, learn about life, learn about ourselves, grow as men, and put it into our art. So
that's amazing, man. That's really good stuff.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward for, to everybody hearing it. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful.
I'm excited for it. I think my brother used to joke about how, like when you would have those shows in Baltimore, like I think he would comment, my younger brother would comment that, man, like this guy be acting like he's ministering. Like you should actually see him like when he's doing his. I think that there's one very interesting picture of you like on the floor. I think like
yeah,
literally like laid out on his back on the floor, like talking into the mic. Like you would think this guy was preaching a hot message, and it's really, it's really inspiring. You put a lot of passion into your art, a lot of passion.
Definitely, I take a lot of inspiration from that too. Like, my mom had us in Houston on Labor Day weekend. There was a pastor that came. His name was Jerry Eze, and it was like a miracle service. People were giving testimonies left and right, and I couldn't get past the parallels of like, some of these guys are really rock stars. Like they really know how to move people, and it's movement through the spirit, and it's God's work. But I definitely take a lot of inspiration from that because
you did say that.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, and they're good at it, and it takes work as well.
And it's words. And that's what you're communicating in words. That's how this the spirit is able to minister to people as well. So that's a very interesting place to be. Wow, this has been really, really an amazing session. Honestly, man. I've learned a lot, laughed a lot. When you're talking about your school, it reminded me of there was this American kid that was in my high school for a little bit.
Yeah.
We had like the American kid. His name was Andrew. I still remember, and he was only there for like maybe like a term or two. And I still remember this experience because like Andrew used to. So we used to have like these housemasters. I'm sure you were in boarding school that would prevent you from doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had like periods of what do you call that thing where you have mandatory sleep?
Siesta.
So you had like siesta periods, and we had like siesta, and we're hanging out trying to like fetch water in the back of the or whatever. And we had this like tank, those big GP tanks. I think they're called GP tanks that would normally hang over buildings. Yeah, we had one that was in the ground, and we're like fetching water from it. And I don't know why Andrew thought like he would like. And it reminds me of you in a way too, because the accent's similar. I don't know why Andrew thought, he would. I think he was in there like helping people like get water and then, pushing it back out because it was really tall. So while that was going on, then we just hear like, this housemaster's coming.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to hide.
so I already know where this is going.
You know where this is going. So Andrew invites me to like jump in, like, can jump in, we can cover the thing and like pretend like we're not there.
Oh, man.
Problem though is like I've always been like my height difference has always been what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew was like, even at that time, he must have been like what, 5'9"?
Yeah.
Like when we're kids, like he was quite tall.
Yeah.
I jumped in that water. I thought I was going to die. Like I really thought I was going to die. And like my feet could not touch anything. Like I'm like, what is going on? He ended up like holding me up.
Yeah. And
then we had to like stay silent till this man walks past.
Wow.
I hope I see him again someday.
And it worked?
It worked. Oh, yeah, it worked. Like we're absolutely quiet. It worked. The man walked, and we had to be like really silent. I thought I was gonna die out there.
What was the alternative? Getting flogged?
Yeah, that was the alternative. Yeah,
I would have just gotten flogged.
Nah, I didn't think I had that kind of big threshold. And plus, that was one of those like really mean housemasters. I think if it was somebody else, maybe I would have like been fine with it.
Yeah.
Like the terror. I don't even think I thought about it. I didn't even think, I could drown versus like, a few floggings. Like the choice was clear because the man was like.
Yeah. We had someone like that, Uncle PHE, the physical education teacher. Yeah.
Say the name of the school actually, in case there's anyone that like went there that.
Yeah, I have people that follow me that went to Grunvig International Secondary School.
How do you spell it?
Grunvig, Grundtvig. That was in Oba, Anambra State.
Interesting.
I know there's people out there that went there that follow me, and people maybe that I didn't know there, but they probably went there too. So yeah. Good times.
That's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. Any last words for it?
I don't know. Just, this was a good conversation. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. It has been an amazing episode of Atypical Podcast. Remember, you can reach out to us at hello@atypicalpodcast.show. That's .show and not .com. And you can also visit the website atypicalpodcast.show. Make sure to follow and also make sure to share, especially if any part of this at all resonated with you. Do you want to invite people to follow you, or how can they reach you?
I'm on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter at Android number 23. That's Android NO23. My website is androidsroom.com. Vet Renee coming soon. Look out for that.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming to spend the time. Appreciate it, and talk soon.
Yes, sir.